Hello, everyone. This is Thomas Pepin, NHL Talk. I'm Thomas Pepin, and let's talk about the NHL. So, um, first, just a bit of housekeeping. I believe yesterday I mentioned I was going to, or I was trying to use streaming software to do these streams, and I ran into difficulties. And funny enough, actually, I don't think there was anything wrong with everything. It just looked weird to me. So, I spent a bit of time before this stream working on testing things, so I think everything's going to work. Um, won't use the streaming software for the next few streams because I haven't used it for the rest of the series so far. So I'm just going to keep it simple. Same thing for the next two streams plus today. And then hopefully after that, I'll be able to use the streaming software where I can share my screen and things like that. So again, it was a lot easier than I thought it was at the time yesterday, and all I had to do actually was hit start streaming, and it actually would have worked fine. But um, there's this weird thing where it was showing my screen, like when there's what do they call it? House of mirrors kind of thing, where there's mirrors on both sides and then it like reflects infinitely kind of thing. So that's what it was doing. And I was like, what the hell's going on? But anyways, yeah. So that'll be good. I'll be able to show you guys more of what I'm working on and stuff. So anyways, so today we are continuing the Be a Real NHL GM series. This is part 8, and we're talking about the LA Kings. Just give me one sec. All right. So, as always, we're using the Armchair GM tool at Cap Friendly. That does all the heavy lifting for you when you're trying to move salaries in and out. Otherwise, as I've done previously, I'm just going over the major moves I'd make for the franchise because for any of the depth things, so like the 13th forward or whatever, it'd probably be the same move every single time. And so it's kind of pointless to do things over and over again for every team. So just the major moves. And so the reason for LA is, of course, under the assumption that performance hasn't been good enough during the GM's time frame, or they've done something inadequately. So we saw with it was Ottawa, where the performance wasn't the best, but the team was good. It was built well. The problem was, well, I guess the combination of poor performance and there was a lot of dead cap spending. So contract buyouts and things like that, which really can handicap a team. So it could be a wide range of things, a combination of things, one thing in particular. And so we'll have a look. And so, as always, I only prepare this subject, don't prepare the results. And so everything is on the fly here. So, yeah. So, of course, the GM in LA is Rob Blake. He's been there since 2017. So that's 5.5 years, essentially 5 full seasons. I believe that's correct. And one sec here. Yeah, so 5 full seasons, and in those 5 seasons, they lost in the first round in his first season. didn't make the playoffs the following 3 years and then lost in the first round last year. So, again, as I've mentioned, for a GM to start to make an impact on a franchise is probably 2+ years. It's really difficult to do things quicker than that. Um, so essentially, you can kind of disregard the first 1 to 2 seasons, and then after that's where you should start evaluating them. So now, of course, I mean it's more complicated than that, and maybe that's a bit too harsh of judgment because, for example, to develop a player, it can take 2 to 5 years. So in reality, you can't see your draft effectiveness and all that kind of stuff. So, but in any case, just keep it simple. Uh, and for the most part, this is driven by the fact that everybody wants, or everybody, I was going to say everybody wants him out, but everybody complains often about Dubas in Toronto. And I think him, it's 4 years. So that he's been in his role. So, uh, yeah, so you could have a short life as a GM, and I think it's kind of uh, maybe 4+ years is where you'd take a look. So, anyways, only made the playoffs once, lost in the first, or sorry, twice, and lost in the first round. Each of those 2 times, missed the playoffs 3 times. Now, just have a look at some of the trades he's made since he's been in. And so just bear with me to navigate to that. And again, since it's on the spot, I actually don't know. So I'll have to scan through these to see if anything stands out. Kevin Fiala signing rates. Ooh, that's not very good for a first, and signing rates for a prospect, it looks like. Yeah, second round draft pick prospect. And that was from Minnesota. And Fiala, I know, has played quite well since he's been in LA. So this season, 42 points in 43 games, 13 goals. So for only a first round pick, that's pretty fantastic. So I think a really good trade there. You would hope that when he made the trade that he knew that he could sign him. If you had no idea, then that's a different story. That I'd say that's pretty risky, but for a first round pick. But anyways, what else do we have here? Arvidsson for a second and a third. He's been with LA 2 years, 49 points in 66 games last year, 31 points in 39 this year, and 20 goals last year is important to note. So for, I think it said second and third. Yeah, so that's a really good trade in the end. All right. They got rid of Jeff Carter and retained 50% of his salary for a third and fourth. Already, I don't like it. I mean, it's unfair to say because you know how good he's done in Pittsburgh so far, but why did they do that? So he re-signed for 2 years. They were on. When was that? April 21. So only 1 year remaining for a third and a fourth? That doesn't make much sense. And retaining salary? He was only getting paid 5.27. That's a head scratcher. He had a full year. Maybe they needed to re-sign someone. I don't know what was going on at that point, but that seems like a bad trade. Was his performance that bad? I guess not that good. 27 and 60, 19 and 40. That doesn't seem like a good trade. He's how old now? 38? I don't know. I don't like that trade. Doesn't make sense to me. And retaining 50%. See, this is where the dead cap's going to show up. I should have that pulled up anyways. Or is it not continued on? Carter. Yeah, I guess the retained salary doesn't stay. So I guess it's not that bad, and I don't know. In the end, still doesn't make sense because they were in the playoffs, weren't they? No, they weren't. I don't know. Maybe to get some value out of him while you had him, but and maybe his performance wasn't good enough for his cap hit. I don't know. It just seems like a bad trade to me. But anyways, again, it was a conditional fourth on top of it. So I don't know. I don't like that trade. I think it's bad. What else is there here? Elias Anderson for a second it was. And Anderson hasn't really played. He's done well in the AHL, so what's his status? Going to be an RFA, so I mean that's okay. He was a first round pick, so not bad. Let's close this. Forbert for a fourth. I think they retained some salary too. Huh. Don't know if I like that one either. Toffoli for Shaler, Madden second and fourth. Schaler's inactive. Madden is he playing? He's in the AHL. Second and fourth. Doesn't seem like that good either because Toffoli, I think, has put up some points. He's like a point per game. Again, it's maybe one of those you couldn't sign him because what that was February, his contract. Expired at the end of the year. So maybe just to get something, but doesn't seem like a good trade anyways. Another one I don't like. Jack Campbell and Clifford for more and 2/3. Another one I don't really like. Because Campbell, I think he was okay in LA. Yeah. Man, I don't like some of these trades. And they retain salary again. Clifford has been not impactful. Another one I don't like. Hagelin for a third and a sixth. That one's not too bad. Muzzin for Grunstrom, Jersey in a first. Grunstrom. What position is he? Jersey. That's actually not that bad of a trade. It doesn't look like in the end. I mean, because you don't know what you're going to get out of the first round pick, but between Grunstrom and Jersey for Muzzin, I'd say it's not that bad. And I think, what's his contract going to expire to? 18, 19. No, he had 1 year left. Yeah, so I'd say not a bad trade. I don't mind that one. Kubalik for a fifth, and then Kubalik's putting up numbers. God, that one's no good. How was he in LA? Oh, he hadn't even played. I don't know the story behind that. Maybe there's something I'm missing, but yeah. Tanner Pearson for Hagelin. What was he getting paid there? Yeah, another one I don't like. What else? Kemper to Arizona for Reeder and Wedgwood. Reeder's not even playing. And Wedgwood, I think he's doing okay in Dallas. That one in the end's obviously not good, but I think at the time it wasn't. That was Kemper with. No, even at the time it was bad. Okay. So he doesn't have that great of a track record with trades, I'd say. I mean, I don't know. Again, you don't know the full details of exactly what was going on. Like, tried to have a look at expiring contracts, but maybe the negotiations are difficult and it's hard to sign people. But not looking too good. Yeah, and that's really about it. So I'd say not a good track record for trades. That's a bit of a problem. Again, performance, like I mentioned, not very good. Well, at least at this point. So maybe it's time for a change in LA. I mean, they look more competitive now. Last year they were decent. This year they're in a playoff spot. I think they're, what are they, second in the division? They are, yeah, second in the Pacific right now. 4 points ahead of Seattle and 4 points behind Vegas. So pretty decent and a bit of space Not that much space between the rest of the Pacific and the wild card spots there. So, I mean, not bad, obviously, if you're in a playoff spot, but not crazy good either. Um, yeah. So, anyways, let's have a look here. I'm going to take a look at um, each group of players, so forwards, defense, and goalies, and then comment on what I'd change. So, um, what do we have here? So we have Kopitar, 10 million per 2 years remaining. I think he's still producing. Yeah, just not at the pace he was. So this was signed halfway through 2016. Um, mm, mm, mm. 10 million seems like a lot. I mean, he was under point per game, close to it, somewhere around 20 some odd goals. See, that's where a lot of times players get paid for past performance, not recent performance or expected performance. So 10 million for him, like I know he's a good two-way forward, but seems steep. Like for the production, I mean, even as an altogether the player, 10 millions, I would never pay 10 million. I would have traded him if he wouldn't go for less. So him, I mean, at the time, 2016, he had relatively consistent performance up until that point. How old was he? So he's 35 now, 2 years remaining. So 6 years ago, 29. I guess, yeah, it's still expensive, not crazy because it expires when he's 37. But again, that I mean, that's reasonable timing, and you kind of expect him to produce until the end of the contract. In any case, it was signed by Lombardi, so I can't really knock it, but or Blake at least for having it. Personally, I would want to trade him. Because I mean, the last 3 years, 21 goals, 62 points, 70 games, 50 points, and 56, which is pretty decent. Actually, in the year before, that's not bad. 67 and 81. But I mean, for 10 million, that's too expensive. Problem is trading him at that cap hit. I mean, you need to find a team in a playoff spot that can afford him. So I think it would be really tough to trade that. And 2 years remaining, including this year. So maybe next year, you kind of have to see what the pack is looking like. You wouldn't want to trade him this year. I don't think you could. Well, who's got cap space? Um, Nobody in a playoff spot has enough cap space, really. Detroit, I could see maybe making a trade, but the thing is they wouldn't want to give up assets for it. Eisman's too smart to do that. So, yeah, I just don't see that working until you see what the pack looks like next year, and then you'd want to trade to a team that has cap space and is in a playoff spot if that exists, which might not be possible. And in which case, you might need to retain salary or whatever to make a trade work. But yeah, I'd say next year look to trade Kopitar, preferably for a roster player. So a guy that can slot in, but it's hard to say what options you'd have. Fiala, as I mentioned, has played well. He was signed by Blake before this season, has 7 years remaining on a 7-year contract. What's his cap hit? 7.875. Point per game, 20 plus goals a year. Last year was 33 goals, really good. This year, a point per game, on pace for 20 some odd goals. That cap hit, I'd say, is good value. As long as he's getting that 20 some odd goals, I'd say it's good value. So, good signing there. Wouldn't get rid of him. Deneau, 5.5 per 5 years remaining on a 6-year contract. Last year, 27 goals, 51 points in 79 games. This year, 31 points in 43. He's a two-way player, that I do know. At a cap hit of 5.5, I'd say that's great. He's probably playing third line center. To have a look. Second line center, same thing. Anyways, he's not the first line, so production's fine for the line that he's on there. It expires when he is 34, so great timing. You get good years for 5.5. I'd say that's a great contract. Kempe, 5.5, 4 years remaining on a 4-year contract. 32 points in 69 games, 29 and 56, 54 with 35 goals and 78. And it was, when exactly was it signed? It was signed July. So that's after the year. So after seeing 35 goals, he gets 5.5. Yeah, he was a first round pick. So, and he had a good playoff too. So you anticipate that it's going to continue. I mean, but the problem is 35 goals. So going from consistently 10 to 15 goals a year to 35 seems like an anomaly. So, I mean, you don't want to spend too much, but keeping it to 4 years is smart, gives you flexibility. 5.5. I mean, it's a steal. If he continues the same production for goals, it's reasonable, even if he doesn't. So, I'd say that's a great contract there. Arvidsson, 2 years remaining on a 7-year contract. 25 points in 50, 49 with 20 goals in 66, 31 points in 39 games so far this year. So, has been better since he moved over to LA from Nashville. And what's the cap hit again? 4.25 is, yeah. I mean, when does it expire? He'll be 31. So, I mean, these are supposed to be his prime years. At that cap hit is great. And I forget what they traded for him. A second and a third. So that's really good value. I'd say great trade, great contract. Definitely keep him too. I follow 3 years remaining on a 4-year contract. 43 points in 70, 30 and 55, 37 and 79, 15 and 20 this year so far. Undrafted player. It was signed 2021. So yeah, after a few years of basically half a point per game, signing at $4 million is definitely reasonable. I'd say great contract again. And he put up really good numbers in college, uh, so that kind of compensates for uh, being undrafted. So, anyways, yeah, good contract again. Wouldn't change that. And that's it for forwards, maybe. What else is there? Any injuries? No. So really nothing I'd change for forwards. I would trade Kopitar next year for sure. Um, it doesn't seem realistic this year, given who's in the playoff spots. I mean, if somebody, yeah, and then like I said, Detroit's kind of only really the team that would, in theory, trade for him, and it just doesn't make sense for them. So, um, yeah. So forwards wouldn't really change anything. Now, here's where guy stands out, and that's what I've been talking about a lot recently is defensemen being overpaid. Drew Doughty, 11 million per year. I mean, it's crazy to me. Oh, there's a guy I missed on forwards. Sorry, Moore got re-signed. I was just looking at this year's contract. So last year of a 2-year contract, and then was re-upped for 4.25 years. He will be 33 at the end. Last 2 years, 23 points in 56, 48 in 81. And this year, 19 and 37. At 4.2, half a point per game. It's fine, I guess. Seems reasonable. So yeah, I wouldn't get rid of him either. Okay, now I can talk about Doughty here. So 11 million per, 5 years remaining, on an 8-year contract that was signed by Blake. So I can get mad at him for the contract. All right. So recent years are 45 points in 82, 35 and 67, 34 and 56, 31 and 39. And then this year, 22 and 42. So obviously a high performing defenseman, has been throughout his career. His peak is, what is it? 16 goals, 59 points in 82. And that was his second year. They won, was it 2 Stanley Cups in LA? Yeah, but anyways, so those Stanley Cups were before the contract anyway, so it doesn't really matter. What year exactly was it signed? It was signed 2018. What time of year? July. So after, you could argue, a career year, 60 points in 82 games. It expires when he is 38. So it's on the older side when it expires. So really, production's going to kind of dip. I mean, this is just an estimate, but probably around when you're 36, it's going to, I'd say in best case scenario, defensemen are up to 36, that they're performing. So, uh, best case, most common, whatever you want to say. So, to sign it so that it expires at 38, 11 million, like there's not nearly enough goals out of him for to justify that. Uh, I can't see how you could do that. I mean, the year after that signing, minus 34, minus 16, minus 14 last year, plus 4. So, I mean, like, and I know these teams weren't the best. Where did they finish in the year where he got minus 34? So that was 18, 19. Missed the playoffs. They were 31, 42, and 9. So, I mean, not a good team, but that's pretty horrendous numbers. Minus 34. Like, I know some of those young guys were developing at the time, and so bit of forgiveness, but it just doesn't make sense. 11 million, like, I just could never spend that much on a defenseman. Cale Makar, as I went over in the past couple of streams, is the only guy, one and only, that deserves 9+ million. Everybody else should be, I don't know, 8. Like, I mean, I could see Doughty getting paid 8 million, just, you know, his history as a player, uh, having won. Maybe there's stuff I'm missing. Maybe he's really well rounded as a defenseman. I mean, I don't watch his play enough. I know he's good. I just don't know in all, like, if he's in all cases good or what. But uh anyways, 11 million, it's just not reasonable as far as I'm concerned, because you could, well, I mean, let's say you paid him 3 million that you could spend elsewhere, you're going to be getting way better production with that money. So altogether, I'm saying, combined between his spending and then spending that 3 million elsewhere. So anyways, in no way I could ever justify this contract. Really dislike it. Would somebody pick up the contract, 5 years remaining, 33 years old? Like, geez. It's the same thing with Carlson, exact same thing. Carlson, although he's at least having a really good year this year, and I mean, Doughty's having, what did I say, a decent year this year. 22 points in 42. So, I mean, yeah, kind of decent. Yeah. I don't even know if it's tradable. That's a problem. Could you do a salary dump to who? And I mean, they're trying to compete. Jeez, I think that's just going to really hurt them in the long run, because they're up against the cap. And then what? So you've got, let's see what happens with their young guys here. What else? What else? So they have 3 young guys expiring. Kupari's not going to fetch much. Filardi will get something. And Anderson Dolan won't get much. So Velarde was a first round pick. He's probably going to get something like 4 million, I'm guessing. Yeah, something around 4 million, because he had a good AHL year the year prior. Can they afford him from the expirations of? I mean, if they don't sign any other forwards, yeah, I guess at the moment, kind of. But then you're you're running with a forward roster of what, 9 spots. Like, I mean, so obviously you can't do that. so they can't afford to re-sign him. I mean, it depends on what happens with the because I'll have to talk about this in a after I'm done with defense, but Jonathan Quick's contract that clears out some cap space, but where are you allocating all this money? So we'll pause for a second. Essentially, we've already discovered they can't afford more or less, it looks like, to re-sign Villardi, but we'll revisit that once we get the whole picture. So anyways, long story short, Doughty's paid far too much because his performance uh, doesn't match up with his cap hit. I mean, if you want to say that, I don't know. Anyways, on the market, he's worth it. Yeah, whatever. Somebody's going to pay him that, but there's no way I'd want that. So we'll go back to that. Uh, it might have to be a salary dump in the off season, but anyways, we'll revisit that in a sec. Matt Roy, 3.15 per, 2 years remaining on a 3-year contract. 18 points in 70, 10 in 44, 21 in 67, and currently 14 in 43. Was a 7th round pick. Did well in college, so that compensates. And kind of stepped right into the NHL anyways. 3.15 is perfectly reasonable for him. I would keep that for sure. Sean Walker, 2.65 per, 2 years remaining on a 4-year contract. 24 points in 70, 18 in 47, missed most of last year, and then currently 9 in 36. So maybe a bit expensive, but has enough of a track record maybe where it's kind of worth it. You think he's probably not. He's probably second or third line. Yeah, third line defense. So I would try to trade that. It only clears up 2.65. You could keep him, trade him. It's kind of I'm indifferent about that, especially if you're getting rid of Doughty. You'd want to keep it, just have a roster player. But yeah, so kind of indifferent on that contract. No big deal. Otherwise, I think Dursey, like I mentioned, has played well. He's got 2 years. Anderson's about to expire, and I think he's been performing. No, confusing with a different Anderson. So 11 points in 54, 8 in 57, 10 this year in 43. So, but he's playing first line right now, which seems weird. I don't follow them enough to know why. He must be decent, playing well enough. They're going to have to re-sign him too. For what amount? Probably inexpensive, so they can afford him. But again, you've got that issue of, okay, you can maybe sign Villardi, but then you can't even fill up the roster spots if you sign him. So there's a problem there. And then is there anybody else on D to talk about? No. Okay, so really the only one I really just would not want that Doughty contract. Again, we'll revisit after talking about goalies here. So Quick expires after this year. It was a 10-year contract. Holy jeez. And he's at 5.8. And last few years, he's been kind of mediocre. So .888 through 46, 904 and 42, 898 and 22, 910 and 46 last year. So pretty average, I'd say. Average in the playoffs to .904. 884 this year, not very good. So I mean, maybe they could re-sign him, but way less, that's for sure. He'd probably get something like, what would he get? Couple million, maybe 3 million from name recognition, but probably, I mean, what he's worth is like 1.5, 2 million or something like that. Yeah, more towards 2 million, 2.5 potentially. But yeah, so if you can re-sign him at something like that, keep him. He's 36, going to be 37. He's still a serviceable goalie. You'd want somebody else with him though, like it's been recently where he's like a tandem. So, yeah, and I mean even throughout his contract, really, 5.8 million. When was it signed? 13-14 was after their Stanley Cup years. So I mean, given his track record to sign him for that, I mean, it wasn't done by Blake. That's Lombardi, but you couldn't have anticipated him to dip in performance. And I mean, the franchise hasn't been that great, so really, you can't really knock the contract and keeping it at this point. I mean, you would have had to have traded him in a year where his value was good. So that would have been 2017, 18. And then in which case you'd probably want to keep him. So, yeah, you're kind of stuck no matter what. It is a tradable contract though. So maybe they could have gotten rid of him, but it's one of those keep trade. It's kind of hard to say. It's more along the, I would say keep him and then get a good backup, but so nothing wrong with that. And then again, nothing wrong with re-signing as long as you split the time and net. What is Copley doing? 904 in 12 games. So how are they in a playoff spot with that kind of goaltending? Ugh, that's concerning. Ingham, is he? But he was season opening IR. Peterson is buried. God. And Peterson was 868 in 10 games this year. Yikes, they got trouble. So I mean, based on just the goaltending stats, I would very much predict that they might not make the playoffs. And I'd say it's almost even likely that it's likely that they're going to drop out because they just don't have enough performance, it seems, to compensate for the goals against and goaltending. It might be team defense or goaltending or both, but doesn't look promising that they're going to stay where they are. So something's got to give. So yeah, LA doesn't. I mean, a lot of their contracts aren't so bad, except for the two, Kopitar and Doughty, in my opinion, at least. And if you just had, so for example, if you took Kopitar, paid him what I think he should be getting paid, which is probably like 8 million, take that 2 million, allocate it to another forward, that's going to put up their production there. Doughty, chop off 5. I mean, realistically, something like 3 to 4 million, maybe you should pay for a guy like Doughty. that could have been spent elsewhere. Then combined, that's another forward that's producing half a point per game. And then that, I think, fixes their scoring or at least makes it better. Ugh, it's just not, doesn't look like that great of a team. I don't know how they're performing so well. I mean, McClellan's a decent coach, but uh, I don't know how they're doing as well as they are. They're in trouble, I think. Um, where's their points coming from? Kaliev's not that great. Let's pull up their website here. Jeez, they have, yeah, barely anybody. Oh, wait. No, that's not right. Yeah, barely anybody performing. So, I mean, it's like it's a what's this the saying? Uh, Scoring by committee or something like that. Anyways, that's I follows missed time, but yeah, nobody. There's nothing that stands out except for Fiala. How are they doing so good? Yikes. So if I had to take a guess, LA is going to drop out, and they're going to probably miss the playoffs. I can't see it, and so I mean the team's not that great for what they're spent. Like they're up to the cap, and it's kind of a very mediocre team. I don't like it at all. Uh, yeah, I gotta see something else. What's going on here? Yeah, they have a negative goal differential. Goals for are towards the top of the Western Conference. God, yeah, they're for sure dropping out of their spot. I can't see them keeping up this position. Huh. So anyways, so I think it's a pretty garbage team, to be honest. There's no, like I said, there's no bad, like, I mean, for the most part, no bad contracts. They just spend too much on their high end there. Huh. See, this is tough. What would I do with them? See, and okay, so another thing, let's just take a look at the bigger picture. So they're spending 3.875 on Cal Peterson, and he's playing in the minors. So that's $4 million you're not getting a performance. $4 million plus the 5 million that they probably shouldn't be spending between Doughty and Kopitar. That gives you almost 9 million. Dead cap on Phaneuf. Who bought him out? Was bought out. Um, bought out by LA? Does that make sense? He was in Toronto, though. No, wait. So what's going on here? No, he was in LA, so he was bought out by LA. And so that must have been bought out by Blake. So that's, yeah, another million wasted. Mike Richards terminated contract, another million. I mean, the Mike Richards thing's complicated. I don't know what should have been done in his case, but something to hopefully avoid paying. Well, they got to pay 700,000 next year, 700 the next year, 600, 600, 600. Like that's almost a player's cap hit, like a depth player that you're just spending on nothing. And I mean, the dead cap on Phaneuf is only for this year, but still, that's $1 million that they could have been spending. Cal Peterson in the minors. Yuck. Jeez. I don't even know what to do with this team. I would almost want, because like the team with what they have in the long run, I don't think they're like if they're developed, like all their guys are in their prime years. Fiala, 26, he's a guy definitely keep. Deneau, 29, keep, good value contract. Kempe, I think he was good for his dollar figure, if I remember. Yeah, at least as far as you can tell, keep him. Arvidsson. Yeah, it is scoring by committee because Arvidsson knew his contract's reasonable. But like, you just have a lot of mediocre players. That's what I mean. Is so it's just so really in the end, I wouldn't say it's necessarily that the team that you should necessarily change anything. It's just the two contracts take up too much for Kopitar and Doughty. Then you've got Peterson wasted money, and Quick just isn't worth his cap hit at the moment. So what do you do? I mean, you can't really trade Peterson unless it's just a salary dump to some team like in Arizona or whatever. They probably would have done it by now if they could have. Oh, what do you do? And Moore's contract comes into effect next year. So that's an extra. Like they can't they can't even afford the team they have, and it's not good. Oh God, it's a mediocre team that's destined to be mediocre. God, what would I do? I mean, my gut instinct tells me just full rebuild, get rid of everything, like just clear it out and tank because it's just no good. Or you ride it out for what is it, 7 years ish, based on who they have till the end of their cores careers. Oh, it's just completely garbage. It's a garbage roster. Again, a lot of the guys are fine, but it's just you the only fix to make them competitive is to get rid of Kopitar and Doughty, uh, and replace them with less expensive players that perform approximately the same. The problem is that who's gonna take them? Doughty, I don't think anybody would take that contract, uh, unless you give up assets, which is what you would have to do, I think, for in the end for him. Because I would never eat up cap. You'd want to just, it has to be a full salary dump. Um, Trade Doughty. So I guess the gist is I would keep Kopitar because he's not far off from his performance and he's only got 2 years remaining. So I would keep him this year, trade him next year at the trade deadline or something like that. Or if you can find a team, like I was saying, that's in a playoff spot and has cap space and would pick him up. Uh, Thankfully, they have at least that flexibility in his case, but Doughty's a different story. So yeah, like I said, trade Kopitar next year. For me to say what at this point, you're not going to get the best value because he's so expensive. Like it's not going to be one of those trade deadline, 2 first-round picks kind of. So if his salary was reasonable, like something like 7-8 million, you'd be able to get probably a prospect, first-round pick, and second and a third, or maybe something like that. I might be overstating, understating, but something like that. But in this case, because his cap hit, you can maybe get, like, if a team really wants them, maybe a first and something, but they would need to have major cap space for that to make sense. So, and to give up the assets for 1 year, the team's probably not going to be the type to do it anyway. So it just doesn't make sense. So, yeah, next year maybe you'll get a first rounder out of Kopitar, maybe, or maybe a reasonable prospect. But something, just yeah. Uh, Trade him, get some assets. Maybe if you can re-sign him in the offseason, something like that. Because he's not a bad player. It's just $10 million, no way. So that's him. So I can't really talk about a trade this year because I would wait for next year anyways. Doughty. Huh. Okay, let's see what we can shake for Doughty. So Arizona could afford him. Boston, Anaheim, Detroit, but Eiserman's not going to take him. Blackhawks. Blackhawks could. That actually kind of lines up. Because they have Kane and Taves expiring. You're basically just replacing. Seth Jones is already too expensive, in my opinion. And you'd be adding in another defenseman at some crazy dollar figure. Would they do it? Let's see what their young guys are doing. Caleb Jones is not going to get that much. Ian Mitchell, not that much. Okay, so there's nobody coming in next year for that, for defense that's going to require the cap. So it's a solid D, and in Chicago if they had Doughty. I mean, for the dollar figure, it's kind of still crazy, but Connor Murphy, kind of overpaid. Jake McCabe, overpaid. Jones, yeah, and he's not going to fetch much. So, Chicago could do it. I could see that happening. They're last place in the standings, I believe. 26 for Columbus, 24 for Chicago. So they're basically at the tied for the bottom. Yeah. The thing is if they pick them up now, then their team's going to be better. But if they trade away Kane and Taves quickly, then they'll get worse. So it can happen, but they'd have to do it pretty quickly. That really does make sense, actually, for Chicago. I like that. I mean, they're picking up a contract that they don't really like, but okay, so what I'm getting at, sorry, I should have said. So if they pick up or at least are positioned to get the first overall pick and they get Bedard, you add in Bedard to the team, add in Doughty, you've got a decent defense. Goaltending's is Mrazek playing well? How's Steelak doing? Mrazek is not playing well. Steelak is playing well. So, would LA take on Mrazek? Trade away quick? That'd be a pretty complicated trade. LA gets Mrazek. Chicago gets Quick and Doughty. Oof. I don't think LA fans would like that, but I'm in charge, so who cares what everybody likes? Would I want Mrazek or Quick? I would want Quick. And he's going to expire anyway, so to be honest, you'd want to keep Quick. So just keep that out of the story. Steelak's playing well. Can't get rid of Peterson. Would they pick up Peterson and put him in the minors? How many years left? 3 years. Steelak expires. Okay, let's just ignore. I'm trying to do everything at once. Let's just ignore that Peterson contract. We're just going to deal with Doughty. So Doughty to Chicago. You can conceivably get them to pick up the full contract. Again, this is under the assumption that Chicago is going to be able to quickly get rid of Caves and Kane and Taves, so that they can, in theory, afford them. Which I think, well, based on their cap space, I don't know from LTIR and all that stuff if they already could, but it's close anyways. They're at 9.7 in current cap space. So, I mean, I think in theory they already can afford him, but I don't know. Anyways, that's kind of we'll just do dollar for dollar anyways, just to make it guaranteed. So it sucks for LA because uh I mean they're trying to compete right now, but again, I'm in charge, so I do what I want. So trade Doughty for what? What does Chicago have? Can you pick up Kane or Taves? Actually, yeah, that's something that you could do. They got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do they have defensemen? How are their defensemen in the minors? What's their team? Is it Ontario Reign? Let's see if they have any defense I can call up. Spence, I think, is already pulled up. Yeah. No, there's nobody. Yeah. So they don't really have anybody to replace Doughty either. They're already up. So you need to pick up another defenseman from somewhere. I don't think that would be as complicated. So Doughty, they wouldn't trade Kane because they're going to get way better value for Kane elsewhere. So that's pretty much guaranteed. Now, can they even trade for Taves? What's his contract terms? No move clause. What does that mean? It's altogether no move at all. Shoot. So he would have to approve. And would he approve to go to LA? Maybe. Yikes. He probably can't. Where would he want to? He wouldn't want to go to LA. I don't think. Maybe. So in a best case scenario, you trade Doughty for Taves and something else. Doesn't really matter what. I would just want to dump the contract. So, but with Chicago, at least you could maybe get decent value back. So, and then worst case, Chicago could conceivably pick him up anyways, because they're going to get rid of those other two players, Kane and Taves, anyway. So trade him for a bag of pucks to Chicago. That's what I'd say for Doughty, and I think Chicago would do it because you get in Doughty, like I was saying, with their current D, conceivably get Bedard. You're kind of in a rebuild team. It's just, I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't do it. Maybe they would. Maybe they wouldn't. I don't know. It's hard to say. That's tough. No, I don't even know if they would take him. Anybody else take him? Jeez. Is there anybody else with bad contracts? Let's do a search that way. All right, so we want active players. We want. That's actually fine. Okay, so who has a high cap hit and is not playing well? Does Montreal have cap space? They don't have cap space. That's unreal. The team's no good and they still don't have cap space. So this is the thing. Like some of these teams, I don't know how they can't even produce a competitive team and they spend up to the cap. Kane Taves already established, probably can't do that. Who else? Who else? Bobrovsky in Florida. Huh, that's actually, I like that idea. Uh, you're not going to get enough because you're losing. How many years left? Oh, and he's got a no move clause. What's his story? God, so it's a no move clause at all at this moment. Unless he approves, and that's just too complicated. Who else? Seguin, you could maybe go for, but that probably wouldn't happen. Um, man. So far, not looking good. What's Voracek's story? I think he's out for the year, if I'm not mistaken, with an injury. I think he might. I thought I read something about him maybe never coming back, but yeah, I still don't think Columbus would do it. No, no, no. Not looking very good. Ryan Johansson. Probably not. No, no, no. Spurgeon. $32. What's his story? 5 years, so same as Doughty. I just don't think it's too complicated of a trade. Vlasic. What's Vlasic's story? Oh, that's another bad contract. 7 years, 7 million, 4 years remaining. He's not nearly as good as he used to be. I wouldn't want to pick up that contract. I'd rather keep the Doughty one. Oh no. Wow, it's really not looking good. No. So yeah, there's no horrendous contracts that are towards anything what Doughty's getting paid. So I've gotten down to 6.5 million, and there's no contracts really that you can do like a bad contract for bad contract kind of thing. So you're gonna have to let Doughty ride out his contract in the end, unless you can do something with Chicago, where maybe Taves waives his trade and or no move clause or whatever, and then Doughty likewise has to waive his no move clause. I didn't even look at that. Jeez. So you have to have 2 no move clauses go. Yeah, so that's just not happening. Yeah, that sucks. So there's nothing that the team's not very good, and there's nothing you can really do about it. That's why they need to get rid of the GM. Have somebody else, do something about it. It's just not a good team, and you can do nothing to fix it. That sucks. So maybe a salary dump to somewhere for Cal Peterson, if anybody would pick him up, or you just have him as the backup and then try to find a decent guy on free agency or in a trade if you could. But I mean, in a trade seems unlikely. So Jonathan Quick, you could re-sign at a low dollar figure and then have him and Peterson, but that's not a good tandem. They are just screwed. So there's nothing you can do about this team either. So a bad team that you can do nothing about. So this is an example of where, since I don't do the planning beforehand, you kind of discover as you go. And so as you've seen, I talk through what I see and what I think, but this team is in trouble, and really you can't do anything to fix it until that Doughty contract's done. So really, nothing they can do at this point. Trade Kopitar next trade deadline or something along those lines. Then that gives you cap space, which you can kind of re-sign some of your young guys. You can. They're in so much trouble. All they can do is re-sign the players they currently have next year once the Quick contract expires. That's it. That's basically all they can do. And God, so there's nothing they can do about this team. So Rob Blake needs to be fired, and the replacement, you would need to, like I said, ride out this roster and see what they can do. That's it. Unfortunate that it took, how long is this stream? An hour and a half almost to discover that there's nothing that LA can do. So yeah, it's just it's tough. So all I can say at the end of this stream is that Rob Blake needs to be fired, and whoever his replacement is, they're in trouble. And just out of interest, I just want to see. Oh no, I think I've already mentioned, and it's like I said, the team's not really all that bad. Was it Blake that signed that Kopitar one? Oh, it's Lombardi. So at least you can't blame him for that. But I think he did the Doughty one, right? He did. So you can at least blame him for the Doughty contract. So LA sucks, and there's nothing they can do about it. Sorry. That's it. So on that fantastic, lovely, happy note, thanks for tuning in. If you liked the stream, hit the like button, share, subscribe, turn on notifications. If you're old school, you can just check my main channel. It'll tell you the stream times. I stream daily, 1 p.m. Eastern. Uh, Most days, the only day I've decided I'm not going to do Sundays. And of course, this is always subject to change. It's just a hobby at the moment. Um, so if I decide not to have a stream, then I'll let you guys know. But, or well, I'll let you know by canceling it, basically. Uh, And last, if you have any comments, leave them in the comment section. Feedback or constructive criticism. If you think there's something I missed, because I don't think in the end I missed anything. The one thing I wish I noticed earlier was the no move clause for Doughty, because then I wouldn't have looked into things as closely as I did. But in any case, in theory, it's like I said, the only real trade partner I could see would be Chicago, or if you just did a straight dump to somewhere else, and who would pick them up, or who would pick up Doughty. I don't really like who would see the value in picking up that contract. It's hard to say. Because whoever had space, Anaheim has space, but they have a lot of defensemen. I doubt it that they would pick them up. There was Arizona. I mean, there's a couple other ones, but I just don't see any of them picking them up. Buffalo, but they have enough defensemen already. Just doesn't line up. So it's like a Carlson, hard to move. So really, yeah. Yeah. So if again, what I was getting at is if there's anything I missed that you think they could do, maybe leave it in the comments and maybe something I could talk about, but don't really see anything. And then, yeah, otherwise, topics and suggestions, definitely welcome those. I would like to produce things that you guys enjoy, so don't be shy. I have two more of this series, the Be a GM one, Toronto, and what's the other one? Carolina, actually, funny enough, is what I'm doing tomorrow. And I say funny enough because they're a decent franchise, but I have them on the list. We'll figure out why tomorrow, I guess. And then, anyways, what I was getting at is the next series, I'm going to actually work on constructing a perfect roster. Now, without the trades, but just plopping people in based on the salary cap and stuff. And I'm actually going to go into pretty thorough detail in the end. I think I've done like a rough outline, and it looks like it's going to be something like I think 8 streams or something. So it's going to be a reasonable, well, pretty long series, 8 days of typical length of streams that I'm going to be going over what I would do to put together a perfect roster. And so the whole purpose of it is to demonstrate a lot of the different comments I make. So great example was today with Doughty. You can't spend that much on a defenseman because just the value per, so the performance per dollar spent just isn't good enough. Because as you see, you've got two guys at one guy at 10 million, one guy at 11 million. And you just can't fill out a roster with those kind of cap hits unless it's some guy like Kaprizov who's scoring 50 goals a year kind of thing. So unless you're getting that kind of production, you can't spend that much on players. So, anyways, I'm going to demonstrate it through that series, along with a lot of other things like what would you call it, resource planning and things like that. So, because that's kind of my background, business consulting stuff. So, planning with um, the franchise over years of when people have their contracts expiring and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna do all that kind of stuff in that series. So, anyways, those are the plans. Thanks for tuning in. See you again tomorrow. We're gonna talk about Carolina, which I think should be a lot more interesting because they're a decent team. So we'll see. See you tomorrow.